So there's a number of 2020 Democratic Party presidential candidates that are proposing a universal childcare policy plan, which would actually heavily subsidize, if not guarantee, childcare to parents. Now, if you know anyone who has children, you will understand that this is an incredibly important issue because the cost of childcare is absolutely astronomical, and I didn't really know how bad this issue was until I recently spoke with a young couple who are trying to find daycare in Portland, Oregon, and not only are all of the daycare facilities booked, but they cost so much money that it's so difficult to afford it because you're essentially taking on a second mortgage or a mortgage in addition to your student loan debt if you want to put your child in childcare so both your parents can work. So it's an issue that's incredibly important, and candidates like Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and Bernie Sanders are all proposing some type of policy that would actually help families with regard to this specific issue. But the propagandists at Fox News aren't explaining it to you in that way. Tucker Carlson is going to frame this as nationalization of parenting, that the nanny state is trying to come in and raise your children for you. That's how he's trying to frame this, rather than talking about the need here and the reality of the economy in 2019 where both parents have to work. He's going to say that the government wants to raise your children for you. And he's going to be serious about this.
The Democratic Party has every intention of taking over healthcare and energy, but they're not stopping there. They'd like to nationalize parenting, too. Both Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris have endorsed plans for socialized child care in the United States. The rest of the party won't be far behind because why have parents raise their own kids when the state can do it? Joy Pullman is executive editor at The Federalist, a mother of 5, all of them 8 or younger, and she joins us tonight. Joy, I'm glad you were able to get a break to come on. I love your stuff on The Federalist. Thank you for joining us. So tell us why we should be skeptical of socializing daycare.
Well, I think there's 2 chief reasons. And the first one is that is not what mothers want for their families. And the second one is that that is not in the best long-term interests of children. So the best research that we have on child care shows that the more that little children are away from their mothers and the longer that they spend, the earlier that they do that and the longer that they spend away from their mothers, the more emotional, psychological, and behavior problems that they have long term. So also mothers themselves just really want to be with their kids because they love them and they want to spend time with them. So it's really not good for the overall health of our society to be breaking the mother-baby bond.
Right.
What we should be doing is doing everything we can to protect it.
Let me just make the counter argument that the left and many conservatives make, which is that business demands a higher labor force participation rate for women. It's good for GDP for moms to leave their small children, outsource child rearing to people from foreign countries, and get back to work to serve global capitalism. What do you make of that argument?
Well, you know, the economy... Well, the whole point of the economy is to support families, right? We don't have families in order to support the economy. We have an economy in order to support families. So what we should be doing is not putting the short-term interests of today's businesses, first. What we should be doing is putting the long-term health of our society first. It is not good for a society if more children are committing crimes, when they grow up, as happened in Quebec when they implemented a full government daycare program there. It's not good for society when children have more emotional disturbances and they're more aggressive. They're having more special needs placements and so forth. And so, all of that, what's really, again, what we really need to do is think about what's most sustainable for society. And of course, business plays a role in that, but it's not the most important thing.
So really quick, if every survey shows that most parents would like to raise their own kids when they're little anyway, if I was running a political party, that's the first promise I would make, to make an economy that could support a family on one income. So if you want to, no one's forcing anybody, but if you want to, you can raise your own kids. It seems very simple. Why is no party doing that?
So I'm not going to show you her response to that last question because, as you could have predicted, she says nothing valuable or meaningful there. She doesn't add to the conversation, and it's just interesting there. I showed you Tucker asking that question because I think it's ironic that he, of all people, poses that question when he works for the propaganda arm of the Republican Party, who's doing everything in its power to reduce purchasing power for normal Americans, also that way oligarchs in America can have lower taxes. Unbelievable. But understand, the entirety of this conversation takes place in a vacuum, maybe with the exception of that last comment from Tucker Carlson, where they assume that nobody really needs childcare, and that the only reason why this is being proposed by individuals like Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris is so that way the state can raise your children for you, because there's this presumption, and they don't say this explicitly, but it's assumed that the state can do a better job at raising your children than you can. That's essentially what they prime you to believe here, and they do it in a pretty explicit way. So he first says Democrats would like to, quote, nationalize parenting, and adds, why have parents raised their own kids when the state can do it? Real subtle there, Tucker. His guest then comes on, who's a mother of 5, so she has credibility. You've got to listen to her, because if you're a mother of 5, then you are definitely the authority on this issue, and you speak for all mothers. She says, well, there's 2 reasons why we should be against socialized daycare. Quote, the first one is that is not what mothers want for their families, and the second one is that is not in the best long-term interest of the children. She adds, it's really not good for the overall health of our society to be breaking the mother-baby bond. So the way that they speak about this issue is as if people have a choice, that they can just willy-nilly choose to not put their kids in daycare, as if it's not an economic imperative. And it shows you how out of touch they are. This is the conversation that we're all having. This is the range of debate that's reasonable with regard to this issue. And they're talking over here. That's how out of line they are. And they say, well, it really shouldn't be the case that the state raises their kids. Okay, I think that most parents would agree with that. So let me ask you this. Will you stop supporting a party and doing propaganda for a party that is doing everything in their power to reduce purchasing power of parents? Will you support a universal basic type income program or Social Security for all program for single mothers, so that way they actually do have a choice and they don't have to send their kids to daycare while they go to work? Because 9 times out of 10, if you ask a parent or a single mother if they would choose to stay home and take care of their children rather than putting them in daycare, they're going to tell you that's what they want. But they're putting their children in daycare because they don't have a choice. That's what they don't get. And I'm sitting here as someone who is not a parent thinking, how could you not know this? How could you not know that in this day and age, if both parents don't work, you struggle to survive? And if you're a single mother, it is almost impossible to get by because daycare is expensive and you're forced to work. So what do? You've got to take care of your family. Republicans aren't for strengthening our social safety net, so they want to have it both ways. They want to make sure that there's no social safety net, but at the same time, they also want parents to be able to stay home with children if that's what they choose to do. Well, you've got to pick one. You have to pick one. You can't have it both ways, guys. The reason why they're so out of touch is because when you take a look at the costs of childcare, well, as Fortune puts it, when it comes to infant-based childcare, in 28 states, childcare actually costs more than college tuition. Let me repeat that. It costs more than college tuition. And that includes states such as California, New York, Florida, and states where most of the American population lives, meaning that this is an issue that affects millions of people. And when you look at the average cost of childcare for the age range of infancy to 3-year-olds, well, in DC, that costs more than $22,000 per year. In Massachusetts, it costs $17,000 annually. In Minnesota and New York, it costs $14,000 each year. And when you even go to the least expensive states like Mississippi, Alabama, and South Dakota, well, it still costs parents thousands of dollars every single year. So when you say that you support a universal daycare-like program, you're not saying, well, I just believe that the nanny state should be raising our children for us because I'm taking a principled position that the state can do a better job raising children than we can. No, that's not what it is. You're just grappling with the economic reality that parents simply can't afford daycare. And it would be best for them, they'd be able to pay more bills if both parents work. But if they do that, then they have to deal with astronomical costs with regard to childcare. So the fact that they don't see this and that a mother doesn't understand that, it tells me that she has a privilege that other parents don't have. She's in an economic position where she doesn't have to work, where she doesn't have to make that choice, where she's not forced to go to work and find daycare for her 5 children. And I love how Tucker Carlson, he tries to present himself as someone who's reasonable and plays devil's advocate. And he asks, well, business demands a higher labor force participation rate for women. It's good for GDP. And this once again demonstrates just how out of touch he is and how mind-numbingly stupid this conversation is. Parents aren't saying, well, I don't want to work. I'd rather stay home with Timmy, but I really want to improve the U.S. economy and grow our GDP. They're doing it because they have to. How do you not know this? I mean, they're so out of touch, and I don't know how you can be a normal American, see this conversation take place, and not have a bunch of red flags go off in your head, even if you're predisposed to agree with Tucker Carlson and Fox News. Because this is a conversation where 2 idiots demonstrate just how out of touch they are. So I don't see how this can resonate with anyone. And they're not even talking about the real issue here, which is that parents don't have a choice. I mean, who actually believes that people are just choosing to put their kids in daycare and pay thousands of dollars every single year because they think that they're not the best person to raise their children? Who actually believes that? I've never talked to anyone who believes this. This is the first time I'm hearing this argument. And it proves to me that Tucker Carlson is slipping on his propaganda game. Usually he's a lot more clever at doing propaganda on behalf of the Republican Party and in attacking Democrats, but he's slipping because this is proof of it. Because if you have this out of touch of a conversation and expect it to resonate, then I've got bad news for you. It won't.
Mike is a total loser, so don't hit the subscribe button, okay? And whatever you do, folks, do not hit the notification bell either. Mike treats me so unfairly.